It is moving into award season now. All the great trailers are starting to drop. We've had a whole bunch of them in the last week. The Terrence Malick trailer just dropped today. Looks beautiful.
Yeah, as one would expect.
But we were just talking about it before the show. I am to the moon and beyond over the trailer for Dolemite Is My Name.
Oh yeah, Eddie Murphy.
Eddie Murphy playing Rudy Ray Moore, a legend playing a legend.
Yeah.
And here's one of the things that I think is most fascinating about that is that there are two classes of films from the blaxploitation era. There are those that were actually made by black filmmakers with black money for black audiences, which includes everything from
Shaft.
Well, Shaft was a studio film,
but
black filmmakers.
It was directed by Gordon. Yeah, Gordon.
Then there's stuff like Black Caesar, directed by Larry Cohen, who directed a lot of these, which were made by AIP and other straight-up exploitation houses, and they were designed to be crossover films on some level to sort of say, hey, this is a hip thing. But then there's stuff like Sweet Sweetback and Dolemite.
Melvin Van Peebles.
Yeah, and Dolemite, which, Rudy Ray owned the negative to that outright. He owned every piece of that film, and he was the first independent filmmaker of any color to do that. I'm not even sure there were white filmmakers that owned their own negatives.
Yeah. I mean, you got to go way back to the teens to like the Lincoln Motion Picture Company and Noble Johnson and his but Oscar Michaud and those kind of guys. But in the relatively modern era, no.
Modern studio era, yeah, and amazing figure, Rudy Ray Moore, just a total pioneer. And here's that film, and it is being directed by Craig Brewer.
Yeah, the film we're talking about is Dolemite.
Yeah, the original Dolemite, Rudy Ray Moore.
The original Dolemite, and the Eddie Murphy film.
And now the new film, directed by Craig Brewer, who did Hustle and Flow, and written by Larry Karashevsky and Scott Alexander, who of course did Man in the Moon and Larry Flint and City Slickers and all that stuff. Not City Slickers. That's Babalu and the other guy. But
Babalu Mandel.
But these are a bunch of white guys.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of white guys who are now have reverence for what was originally kind of a fringe blaxploitation film that has acquired such a cultural cachet that it is now part of the broader conversation.
Yeah.
It is. It's just priceless.
Yeah, interesting company on the heels of I guess what were we calling that thing, that Shaft thing that came out? It's not a remake. It's some kind of a sequel-y kind of rebooty kind of whatever the hell it is. and then of course about a year before that, the Superfly remake. I guess contemporary remake.
Total remake.
So these things are just sort of in the zeitgeist in a particular kind of way. But this one, I think is despite the fact that you have Eddie Murphy and of course Rudy Ray Moore, this comedian, who created this character Dolemite. Dolemite was the character created by the comedian Rudy Ray Moore. Yeah, lets people not understand what's going on here. Yet it seems to be the most serious of all of these reimaginings of these black exploitation era films. It seems to be the one that's pointing itself at an Oscar nomination, at least for Eddie. But I see a lot of good work being done on that trailer. Lunel, the comedian, I see a lot of interest. Wesley looking very interesting in that.
But now,
movie.
what do you think about Wesley Snipes playing D'Urville Martin?
Frankly, he's a little too edgy to play D'Urville. D'Urville was not the
It looks. I mean, because that's a funny thing to me. I would not have. I never in a million years, if I'm casting. I mean, Eddie Murphy as Rudy Ray. That's a no-brainer. That's no problem. But if I'm thinking about all the different parts, I would have cast. There are a lot of.
Well, Mike Epps is already in the movie.
See, that's the thing. Mike Epps actually looks like D'Urville Martin.
Yeah, but that's who I would have cast.
I would too.
He's already in the movie, but I would have cast him.
But somehow it looks like it works.
I could even see Jordan Peele has a sort of D'Urville Martin, and plus he with the comic timing and all that kind of.
But Wesley can do the comedy. People forget.
Wesley has timing.
Wesley has timing, and he hasn't gotten to do comedy a whole lot. To Wong Fu, he did it. But that's something we haven't seen from him in a long time. So
going back to those baseball movies, those Major League.
Yeah, that's right.
That's all the way back to that. Yeah.
So he can be funny.
But in terms of just looking like and being correct in that way, look, just about every black comedian in LA is already in the movie. So
I just
eventually, I suppose you had to cast somebody else. But
I can't. It looks like they are restaging scenes from the movie absolutely picture
oh,
perfectly.
the thing with the machine
With the
gun,
machine gun in
with
the white suit with all the squibs.
That's
That's and in the bed when they bring the ceiling down. I mean, all that stuff.
yeah.
It looks like they're gonna have a lot of fun with it.
Rudy Ray, who was like we were talking about this. Rudy was plus 40, well plus 40 before any
Yep.
of this started to happen for him.
Yep.
He'd been doing other things, comedy. One of those sort of guys who came out from the diaspora.
Yeah.
When all these black folks came out west, some went to Harlem, some came through.
Went right through Jim Crow
Mhm.
and the Northern Migration and World War II and the Civil Rights era. I
Mhm.
mean, he lived through
All of that.
all of that.
And what's interesting is that when he arrived here, late 60s, early 70s, Hollywood really was a place where just about anything could happen, where a brother
Yeah,
could become a movie star. We forget that in the early 70s, during the making of these movies, a woman, Pam Grier, was an
yeah.
above the title action star, walking around movies with a shotgun, doing exactly what Steve McQueen was doing in movies. Not making as much
Yeah.
money, but in terms of the context, she was an above the line, a black woman, above
Yeah.
the line. And so this is just so strange to me that 40, 45 years ago now, it was in some ways easier for black and brown folks to sort of pull these
Yeah.
things off than it is now. Now the system sort of has overwhelmed all of that. It might be coming around again because you can go out and get a 4K. Well, you were just telling me about a new
Yeah.
4K something. You go get a 4K camera and you get these things
Yeah.
done. So
It's and it looks like they're definitely tapping into that.
yeah,
And just judging from the trailer, it looks like they really do want to capture not just the comedy of it. They're not doing Undercover Brother. They're not just saying, "Isn't this funny? Let's laugh at it." But they do seem to recognize, and I think
Craig Brewer.
Craig Brewer has those sensibilities too. That as do Karashevsky and Alexander, because they've done that. Which is, I mean, and the People versus Larry Flint. You laugh at it, but you also
People forget that's a drama.
that's a drama.
Yeah.
So, and the same thing with Man in the Moon.
Yeah.
There's an absurdist element to what they do, but I think they get the pathos very well, and I think this is gonna it's gonna surprise people. Netflix funded too.
Yeah.
They're gonna position it for awards.
Apparently,
and,
Netflix. This town is going to resolve itself down to Netflix and Disney. Or labels
Amazon.
or
Amazon will be in the mix
Maybe
too, yeah.
Amazon will be in the mix.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure about Amazon being in the mix because it can do other things.
That's true.
And why put up the fight?
Yeah.
So I don't know. 5 years from now, whatever the names are, the products are going to be the products of Disney Studios or
Yeah.
Netflix Studios. I'm almost sure of it.
It's going to be really interesting because as soon as the Redstone family exits their businesses, Viacom, CBS, Paramount, that's all going to get sold to somebody.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling Universal is going to get it. But
Yeah.
anyway.
Or Jeff Bezos, one of the other.
Well, I got a bunch of PBS stuff, a bunch of amazing PBS stuff. So I'm gonna roll through some of this stuff relatively quickly. Again, our moonshot anniversary, 50th anniversary of the moon landing stuff continues to deliver really, really great material. PBS has a Blu-ray, Chasing the Moon. This is a Robert Stone American Experience documentary that is, and I hate to say that they're all really, really great, but they are all really great. This is 3 discs, 6.5 hours, and taking yet another angle on the space race and that incredible moment in the 1960s when astronauts became superstars and the people behind them. And how it all happened. It's really very, very impressive. And 6.5 hours, you're going to think, gee, do I really want to invest? Yeah, you know what? You do, because it's history. And there's European money in this as well, which is really, really interesting. But there's a lot of material in here I had never seen, a lot of footage I had never seen. And the thing that's really nice about Chasing the Moon is that it's not just focusing on the political and on the personalities. It gets into the science as well and all of the innovations and how they had to create a lot of this stuff from scratch.
Yeah.
It wasn't, they weren't saying, oh, there's a great piece of software that this company writes. I mean, everybody writes software now.
Yeah.
Everybody codes now. Everybody builds gizmos. They didn't have the software. They didn't have the gizmos. They had to sit around a bunch of engineers and a bunch of people at NASA and they had to sort of invent it from scratch.
Yeah. It's new
amazing.
engineering, new science, new math.
All the way. And then we've also got, and that's on Blu-ray. So, and then on DVD, everything else is on DVD. Really good stuff here. I'm going to go through it as quickly as I possibly can. First Horse Warriors from Nova. This is going all the way back to when humans domesticated horses, not just to get from point A to point B, but to integrate them into every other aspect of your life. For fighting, obviously, and that's primarily the angle here. That it introduced a whole new way of conquering other peoples and expanding territory. We don't think about what the horse did, but without horses, we'd still be roaming around in mountain enclaves and caves. So really, really extraordinary. The nomadic people who just changed history. From Frontline, Trump's trade war. This is in collaboration with NPR. This is changing day by day, to be honest. Literally, as I'm speaking right now, a bunch of tariffs that were set to go in effect on China have been delayed until December.
Yeah, since the stock market back up.
Yeah, so this is an ongoing thing. So this Frontline is designed with its own obsolescence in mind. It sort of asks more questions than it means to offer answers to. But it also goes into the underlying rivalry between the U.S. and China, arguing that this is not just about Trump, it's not just about trade, it's not that there really is kind of a new Cold War brewing, and that it is.
It includes territorial waters,
all that stuff. So it goes into that as well as to what the source of this is, and doesn't come up with any answers.
As protesters in Hong Kong are creating a Tiananmen-like. Not Tiananmen because it's not in China, but a Tiananmen-like situation in China. I don't know about you, but look, I was in the Air Force for 6 years, stationed in the forest. So I can tell you this right now: this is going to all end very badly.
Unless it spreads inside China internally.
Yeah,
I know. Yeah, unlikely, but it's always possible. You never ever know. Another Frontline, The Last Survivors. This is just profoundly beautiful, and it reminds us that as we are now 70-some years past the end of World War II, we have very little time left with the last living Holocaust survivors.
Mm-hmm.
They are becoming, like the World War II veteran generation, a smaller and smaller group, and it makes me sad in a way to think that there will come a time in my daughter's life when there will be no more firsthand survivors around to tell that story. Yeah. She will never. I've met Holocaust survivors.
Yeah, you and I both, and it is a different thing. You will never engage in any notion of Holocaust denial after you've humanly sat down with a Holocaust survivor. That will go away.
Yeah.
So
people who can tell you what it was like the day that they were put onto a train, the day they arrived in Auschwitz or Bergen-Belsen, the day that they saw a loved one killed,
the way they were separated from their families and sent off into the
to hear those accounts firsthand is really vital, and it is important to have at least a record on DVD, on tape, on wherever these things last as part of the Shoah project that Spielberg has been so good in getting going. So in any case, you can never get enough of these. This is directed by Arthur Carey, and it takes it doesn't displace any of the others. It is complementary. It's an hour long. It's not trying to sort of overreach, but it is looking at kind of how these people feel as they approach the ends of their lives, having survived the greatest tragedy of the 20th century, and now they've been able to get to the end of their lives. And there's a certain philosophical quality to it. Another great Frontline, The Abortion Divide, which of course continues to be, it's never really gone away. It kind of ebbs and flows. And they go to Pennsylvania to look at, talk to people on both sides of the issue and to see where we are, where we've come, and try to anticipate where we're going to go and why this issue doesn't seem to go away.
It's an issue back in flux as the Supreme Court is changing ever more conservatively over the last few years.
Yep. Kilauea, Hawaii on Fire, an installment of Nova, about an hour long. And Kilauea has erupted constantly over my lifetime and will continue to. The Hawaiian Isles are, of course, a volcanic line of islands. And as that tectonic plate continues to move, the volcanoes there continue to create new islands. And Kilauea is the one that everybody pays the most attention to because it's always just blowing off and sending giant lava streams to wipe out neighborhoods in very, very slow motion. And so this looks at it in the light of its recent spike in activity, and takes that as a leaping off point to look at all the rest of the volcanoes in the Pacific and the general tectonic volcanic activity in the Pacific, and again, what this may mean for the future of Hawaii. It's very, very interesting.
Yeah.
It's not quite like the Werner Herzog documentary
It goes into
on
the
volcanoes
yeah.
because it doesn't have Werner Herzog saying things like molten magma, which I love. I just want to hear Herzog say molten magma over and over and over. From BBC Earth, which aired on PBS, Rivers of Life, Nile, Amazon, and Mississippi. Three of the most epic rivers on the planet. And this is a three-part series that goes into what makes them different, what makes them essential to their various parts of the world, and how they operate. What makes them, why are we so consumed with these three epic, legendary rivers? It's really interesting. The Nile is, of course, the world's longest river. I used to think that it was the Yangtze, but it's not. It's the Nile.
The Nile, yeah,
It's the
interesting.
Nile. And the Nile flows in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
That's the funny thing about it.
Yeah.
That's why ancient Egypt called the northern kingdom what was actually the southern kingdom, and vice versa, because
they
their
thought
world
the river was flowing north.
their world was upside down because of the Nile. It's fascinating. The Amazon is just amazing, and everything there is way too big, including the bugs. And then the Mississippi needs no introduction. It's the heart of America.
It's my river on
That's it.
St. Louis, on the banks of St. Louis. Yeah.
Without the Mississippi, America would not be America.
No, transport. The Erie Canal first, but later the Mississippi was the mode of transportation. Not to mention it gave us the writings of Mark Twain.
Yeah, riverboats and commerce and everything else. We've got from American Experience, Woodstock, 3 days that defined a generation, just as the anniversary Woodstock.
All these anniversaries from the late 60s.
But it went kaput. They had a whole new Woodstock planned, and it didn't materialize.
That is so good. It's like watching the most extravagant and best failure you've ever seen. Everything just goes wrong. They do it all wrong. These young guys, and what I like about that doc is it starts well before the actual concert.
Yeah.
2 or 3 years when they start thinking about this and putting it together. These young guys, raising money and all this kind of stuff, and then it just sort of works its way into the actual thing. And not a whole lot of performances in that doc.
No.
You get Richie Havens, but you get to learn that Richie Havens wasn't supposed to start the concert. He just happened to be there.
What blows me away, especially watching this, is we had the moon landing, the Manson murders, and Woodstock within weeks.
Yeah,
that's kind of amazing to me.
Yeah,
all within not just the same year, all within weeks.
All while that war was percolating and raging underneath it all, you know. And so, sometimes when we get all excited about stuff, and you and I, we were kids when all this was going on, but all of this stuff lingers in my memory. I don't know how.
Does mine too.
But it definitely lingers in my memory. And sometimes I have to think, whatever with today's news.
That's true. From Frontline, one that is very, very disturbing because it's called sex trafficking in America, and we don't want to believe. We like to pretend that we've gotten beyond slavery. We've gotten beyond all of these issues that are part of our past, part of other countries' past, part of other countries in lesser parts of the world. But it goes on. And it
works, and it comes right through the heart of America. Sometimes, literally, the heart of America.
This is not something that is happening in some other city. No. This is not something that's happening on the other side of the tracks.
It's not something that's just happening to little Russian girls, or little Taiwanese or Indonesian girls. There are middle-class white girls being sex trafficked.
And see, this is what disturbs me about this: is watching this documentary, I think, okay, some of my daughter's classmates. In due time could wind up falling into this.
Yeah, make a mistake here or there.
and there may be a house down the street from me,
Yeah. Yeah.
literally in my
Yeah.
neighborhood,
They're not
where
all in
this
the
is
hood.
going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it
And
is
that film makes that a little bit more clear. It's a little chilling.
it is really, really chilling, and you realize what an incredible uphill battle law enforcement has to and prosecutors as well to stop this. It is a pernicious and embedded practice all over the world, and it comes right into the middles of our neighborhoods. So, sex trafficking in America, not a happy doc,
Mm.
but it's an important one. King Arthur's Lost Kingdom from the Secrets of the Deadline. Look, everything about King Arthur is just utterly fascinating, and the origins of the myths, the story, the Mort d'Arthur by Sir Thomas Malory, all of that from a literary standpoint is one thing, but when you get into the archaeology of it and you realize that there may very well be actual evidence of things that foreshadow that are sort of the roots of the literary history of King Arthur and all the the poems and Sir Gawain and the Green Knight and all that stuff that you learn in English class, that there's an archaeological and historical component to it that may underlie it. That's really interesting. And so this goes into everything behind the folklore and whether or not there really was an Arthur and who would he have been, and what was the socio-political situation of his world at the time. Really, really interesting. Very, very fascinating stuff. And it's an ongoing field of study because so much archaeology just changes day by day. The Would You Be Mine collection of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. This is 30 classic episodes from about a 20-year period, from 1979 to about 2000, and it is absolutely wonderful. It brings back a lot of memories. I watched this stuff when I was a kid. You see him age through this thing, but you see him have the same heart. And we're in kind of a rediscovery of Mr. Rogers now, thanks to the documentary and, of course, the forthcoming Tom Hanks film. And it really is. It's nice to rediscover this, and it gives you, despite all the other crap going on in the news, this gives you a lot of hope and wonderful guests on his shows as well. It's really, really beautiful. 30 episodes of Mr. Rogers, as good for your kids as they were for my generation.
That Tom Hanks trailer is very, it's encouraging.
It is.
Because not that I knew that they would probably get that right. Because Tom's not going to let them get it wrong, but it's very encouraging.
Talking about the abortion battle earlier and the changes in the Supreme Court, that brings us to this Frontline called Supreme Revenge, the battle for America's highest court, which is really, really interesting. We, of course, have all lived through this. This is not something that's been off the news. This is right there, front and center. But what they do very, very well at Frontline is they try to expand the scope of it. So they kind of zoom the lens back a little bit and look at how we got here, and going all the way back to the fight over Robert Bork, and it gives you a broader perspective on the fight over the High Court and what it means, and it gives you a really interesting perspective into the workings of the High Court as well. From Nova, Saving the Dead Sea. We may not realize this. A lot of people may not have. It might not quite dawn on them, but the Dead Sea. It was never really the Dead Sea. The Dead Sea was always very living, where they just called it the Dead Sea because it's so salty. However, it is actually dying now.
Yeah.
The
irony.
It is starting to disappear. It's the actual level. It's starting to evaporate, and that's been going on now for a good 40-some years. And this is very, very troubling, and you may not have followed this necessarily. It's kind of a thing, more in other parts of the world, in the Middle East and elsewhere. But yeah, the Dead Sea is and I didn't see it when I was in Jordan. Some of the other people from our group went to it, but I didn't see it. So
the irony of ironies, that the Dead Sea is finally dying.
Right? Yeah. Well, anyway, there are all kinds of scientific solutions for what to do, as there are with all these things. It's just a matter of having the money and the wherewithal and the will.
Yeah.
Another one from Nova, Inside the Megafire. This one hits a little bit too close to home. I've lived through these, too many of them.
Yeah, boy.
And this specifically focuses on the Camp Fire, which is more a forest fire than a brush fire. That was the Northern California fire that just raged endlessly and just burned out the entire town. And while that was going, we also obviously had our Woolsey fire down here in Southern California, which devastated I mean, you know, friends of my daughters,
Yeah.
people we know from school, they lost their homes.
Yeah.
So I have too much. I'm a little bit too close to this.
Well,
But
the problem of it is some of this we talk about as the new normal,
yeah,
which has to do with climate control. Some of it
yeah.
has to do with things that utilities do,
I,
that privately owned utilities do.
and
And these, they're not the same.
yes, and you and I have talked about this,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to get into the details.
Oh.
I have very strong opinions about it, and I was actually interviewed for a documentary about it. We'll wait until that documentary comes out.
Yeah.
But yeah, actually, a very famous and successful documentarian is making a documentary about this subject, and I was one of the interview subjects, and I will say nothing more about it.
There shouldn't be any such thing as privately owned utilities. There, I said it.
Yeah,
that's what happens. That's me. Yeah, privately owned utilities,
and they're going bankrupt,
Yeah.
going bankrupt because of this.
Yeah.
Anyway. So yes, that's worth watching, especially if you have not lived through it. If you've lived through it, it's gonna hurt. From the American Masters line, Robert Shaw, Man of Many Voices, really, really wonderful. I'm a big classical music buff. We're going to talk a little bit more about classical music later, but you know, there are certain you can't keep track of every conductor,
Yeah.
and Robert Shaw is a conductor I was not terribly familiar with. So this was really interesting to kind of go back into who he was and why he was significant, and really quite interesting. This goes into more than just the music. This goes into his social activism, the fact that he performed Bach in the Soviet Union, the fact that he was the first conductor to break the color barrier in the South, the fact that he, you know, what he did during the Cold War to sort of bring audiences together on both sides of the Iron Curtain. I mean, really a significant figure and a wonderful, wonderful, obviously a brilliant musician at the same time. The collegiate chorale and, you know, very, very, really fascinating. And all of this during, you know, from the Depression era on to the post-war period. Really a fascinating figure. Really a really great American Masters. And most of the American Masters center on people that we already know. Robert Shaw, somebody that I was not familiar with. But here, I'm going to say something else too, as long as we're on the American Masters thing. The two best American Masters productions ever
Yeah.
were multi-part series, and neither of them has ever been released.
Oh.
One on Chaplin, one on Keaton. And I've got to wonder why.
Mm.
So, I'm just, it continues to puzzle me, but there it is.
Might be a rights thing someplace, I suppose.
Are we gonna go some new movies? Hit some new movies.
New movies. Interesting squad of stuff that we have over here on Blu-ray, including this fairly cute little movie called Plus One. I remember when this came out. It's, you know, a cute little movie about a couple who, as they roam into their late 20s, find that all their friends are getting married, and they're having to go to all these weddings, which means they have to get dates to go to all these weddings. And of course, they're being pressured and pressured and pressured by family and their friends, particularly ones who are getting married, to in fact get married. And everyone always wants to know if they're possibly going to marry the person that they're on the date with at that wedding, which of course they are not, because they just got that date to go to the wedding. So they decide instead to simply always be each other's plus one. And the movie goes exactly where you think it might go. It is nevertheless funny and kind of charming, just like it says on the back of the box here. You know, look, sometimes these little movies that you know, slip into the whatever don't quite get as much notice as they ought to. These are cute little movies, and I can remember a time when a movie with this plot would have starred Julia Roberts or maybe Cameron Diaz, or maybe both Julia Roberts and Cameron Diaz.
Why not?
As a matter of fact, I think I saw that movie. Nevertheless, this is cute. Special features includes deleted scenes, some extended scenes. Fun little movie, which I rather enjoyed. Charlie says stars one of my Matt Smith, one of my favorite Doctor Who's,
he's the best.
New
Love
era
Matt
Doctor
Smith.
Who's. Mary Harron film. Mary Harron, you know her from American Psycho and Betty Page and
Sure.
a number of interesting films going. Mary Harron's career is really interesting. She goes way back. She's one of those female directors, women directors, who actually managed to start carving out a space for herself 30 years ago, late 80s, early 90s. You can see her name on episodes of Homicide: Life on the Streets.
Right. That's right.
And stuff like that before she got her, big break in about 2000 or so and knocked out that American Psycho film. And and built a bit of a, and it has had quite a, so, Mary Herron doing good work here. This is decent work. It kind of it re-envisions the whole Charlie Manson thing. Not the way Quentin did it.
No, yeah.
in Once Upon a
nobody
Time.
does it the way
No,
Quentin
she
does
goes inside the prison system, and it's about this psychiatrist who's working with these women, particularly the women who fell under Charlie's
Yeah.
spell, and trying to see if she can break the sort of psychological prison that he
Hold.
built around it.
Yeah.
It's really interesting stuff. Matt Smith playing a very sharp and creepy, but at the end of the day, it's a movie about that sort of thing. Hannah Mary, Saoirse Bacon, Marion Redden, and Suki Waterhouse with Matt Smith. And that one, not bad. The Last Command is the story of a just horrible submarine sinking.
And
back in 2000.
this is a lot like another submarine movie that I had to review on Film Week this last year, and this is the more realistic one. This is the one that's about the actual
actual sinking,
the actual Russian sub.
Yeah.
that we all
under the Bering Sea back in 2000. 23 sailors.
Yeah, we watched that whole thing unfold,
Yeah.
and I had to cover this on Film Week, and it's I think this is a really, really good movie, but it just got no play here.
Yeah, Colin Firth, Matthias Schoenaerts.
Yeah.
And which is I don't know, a sad sort of thing. Mostly, it's about what the families were doing back
Yeah.
in order to get some sort of movement out of the bureaucracy of Russia. I remember it being very specifically about the Russians sort of stonewalling the Americans and everybody else as we were attempting to try to help them save these 23 soldiers. But Vladimir Putin wasn't having that, which is very funny given that today, the day of the recording of this, the Russians have had themselves another little nuclear situation.
I know.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do.
And I don't know if this is a Chernobyl. I know that they say that 5 scientists were killed, but of course, back in 80, whenever
You never
Chernobyl,
know.
they said, well, there were 2. So they lie.
They always lie. I'll say this about this: Thomas Vinterberg directs the hell out of this movie.
Yeah.
I mean, it is Das Boat level recreation of the interiors of the submarines and putting the camera where you never imagined he would put it, and it's very impressive.
Yeah.
But it's still basically just the history.
Yeah, of this thing that happened when it happened. Teacher. This is a sort of moving and piercing film about a teacher who is a functional alcoholic. And the only thing is destroying his marriage. It all has to do with something that goes back in his life to what happened with his mother, watching his mother be abused. And he sort of held himself together there for a while, and he became a very good teacher, a high school teacher at a private school. But he is, in fact, a functional alcoholic. The only thing that's really helping him keep himself together are 2 students that he has as a part of this, in trying to help these 2 students. That's what's holding them together. There's a kid, a bully, and the bully is particularly focused on these 2 students. The bully's father is played by our friend, Kevin Pollak.
Yep.
Who's a rich guy in town and all this kind of stuff. And it's about what this teacher decides to do in order to protect these 2 students. And you know what? It's a pretty good drama. That I rather enjoyed. Bonus features includes a short about the making of the film, some deleted scenes and whatnot. Kevin Pollak is particularly good in this movie.
He's a better actor than a lot of people really give him credit.
Yeah, because he came comedian,
Yeah.
and then he had that really standout performance in that Bryan Singer film,
Usual Suspects.
Yeah, his standout performance in that.
He's also really good in Avalon.
Oh,
Barry
yeah,
Levinson's
yeah.
Avalon.
Barry Levinson.
Everyone always forgets
going all
he's
the way
in that.
back. Yeah. So Kevin should have our friend Rod Lurie cast him as the president in his first film, Deterrent.
Oh, that's right.
You know, Kevin plays the president in that movie. You should have had more shot, Kevin. The Curse of Llorona. This is a very good film. A ghost movie is what it really is, but it's set on the sort of Mexican American myth. It's beautifully told. You have this social worker and these 2 children that look like they're being abused because the mother is locking them in a closet. She takes the children away from the mother. The children, while in the orphanage, eventually they come up dead. They're found in the river. The mother blames the social worker because she tried to explain to her that she was locking the children in the closet to save them from the curse of the Llorona Locan. Now the question becomes, will the curse jump over This is some good, scary lore.
I missed this in theaters, and I'm kind of sorry that I did.
Yeah. Good stuff. Special features. It includes a behind-the-scenes sort of stuff and a documentary about the curse itself.
And that's the curse of Llorona with 2
Llorona,
L's.
thank you.
2 L's.
Yeah, for correcting me.
2
on that.
L's.
My Spanish pronunciation.
Yeah. Mine ain't much better.
Yeah, but you got the French on there, and the making of a monster movie, deleted scenes and some storyboards. So there you go.
Beautiful.
Trial. by fire. This is a story. I love this young actor, Jack O'Connell. He came on the scene in a movie called Star 80 or something like that a couple of few years ago, and he has just been eating it up ever since.
He's a British actor, and really, really strong, and he's been positioned to kind of be the next big thing for a while, and he's coming on strong.
Is that him in that Elton John movie?
No,
that's not him. That's
no. That's the other guy from Kingman.
I confused them sometimes. Those guys, but they're right in the same pocket there. Anyway, this is set in 1992. It's about this guy named Cameron Todd Willem, who is accused of a gruesome and horrible murder.
Taron Egerton.
Egerton is the other guy. And then the one woman, not a lawyer, but a woman, a civilian, who realizes that he's being railroaded. That there's all kinds of evidence that's not being looked at, exculpatory evidence not being looked at, and that the logical conclusions being made. And it's about her setting out to save him from the electric chair.
Yeah,
and it's a good movie, powerfully told. Jack O'Connell, Lord Dunn, directed by Ed Zwick. Of all folks, I mean, Ed it goes by. It's sort of a strange thing that these sort of like major directors and actors.
It's a conscience movie that Ed Zwick wanted to make, so he decided to do it for a little bit of a lower budget. It seems. It's sort of by the numbers. But it's still an Ed Zwick movie. It's still really incredibly well made and put together.
Edward's his films kind of go because for a while there he was a major guy,
and he still is.
Denzel Washington films.
He's focused on He's been focused on the Nashville TV show, which he's a producer on, and that's just
it's an interesting thing that all of these major directors from back in the day have moved their brands onto television someplace.
Kind of wild.
The brands kind of get lost because if you didn't know that, you wouldn't know that. But the thing of it is, that's where they're making the money.
And it's strange because it's also fragmented. We've talked about this many times, but it's not like back when if you asked everyone if they'd seen Bonanza, pretty much 100% of everyone in the country either A, saw it Sunday night, was watching it, or B, no, they chose not to, but they knew it was on.
Yeah.
Today, if you ask people, even Game of Thrones, hey, you see Game of Thrones? I've never actually seen Game of Thrones.
Yeah. You get a lot.
I know there are a lot of people who have never seen an episode of Game of Thrones.
The actual numbers are not what the numbers used to be. When a 30 share literally meant 30 million people were watching your show, MASH, and all of that. This was sort of a cute comedy, I suppose. Palms, Diane Keaton, Jackie Weaver, Pam Grier, Celia Weston, Rhea Perlman playing these older women who start a cheerleading squad. From the producers of Bad Mom and The Book Club and all that kind of stuff. So this is one of those films that you would sort of expect. What's interesting about this film is that in all of this promotional stuff that I have here for it, the one name, not even on the box, associated with this film, and a major role in the film, a role equivalent to all the other ladies' roles in the film, is Roseanne.
Crazy.
Roseanne is one of the cheerleaders in this movie. Her name is not on this box, and you would not know she was in this movie if you didn't know she was in this movie.
Well, there's a reason for that.
Yeah, that's the thing that happens sometimes. Nevertheless, it's a perfectly heartwarming and sweet comedy. Enjoy it, even with Roseanne in it. I think you'll be okay. Roseanne could be funny what you wanted to. A Dog's Journey. I hate these movies. From the people of A Dog's Purpose and Dog's Shoelaces.
I'm so tired.
Hat.
I'm so tired of lost dog movies and follow them on their odyssey. I
another one came out this last week. The Art of Racing in the Rain, with Kevin Costner playing the voice of the dog in that one. You know what? It was a dog too. Anyway, these movies are certainly perfectly lovely for folks that are into this zone. I am not. I'm not going to pretend like I am here. Now, bonus features. Deleted scenes, extended scenes, a gag reel, probably really cute dog stuff, and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. So, on Blu-ray, A Dog's Journey.
Yeah, it is.
Where are we going?
Let's do 4K now.
All right.
It's a big week for 4K. Big week on 4K. And we're going to start with the two films. Well, let's just start with the real one. The one that everybody wants to know about. Avengers Endgame.
Yeah.
Now officially the most successful movie of all time.
Did it make it over the hump?
It made it over the hump.
Kind of quietly.
Well, so here's how we have to sort of temper this. This is in terms of inflation calculated.
Yeah.
It is
The cost of the movie
the
ticket.
cost of the movie. It is still like $16 million behind Avatar, down around 20 something or other. So it's not even in the top 10. It's nowhere even close. But in terms of dollars earned, it is the most successful film of all time. It is, however, the number 2 film both internationally and domestically. Domestically, it's the number 2 earner behind Star Wars, the whatever, the episode, whatever the JJ return. What was it? The Jedi come back and beat your ass. I can't keep track of the titles anymore.
Too much.
But episode 7, whatever episode 7 was, that's the most successful film domestically. It's about $70 million ahead of Endgame.
Okay.
Internationally, it's still behind Avatar. Avatar is ahead of it by something like 60 million.
Okay.
But you put all that together, it's number 2 internationally behind Avatar, number 2 domestically behind Star Wars Episode 7. That's enough to make it about $10 million ahead of Avatar overall.
Okay.
So it is the most successful film of all time in terms of dollars earned. And the Blu-ray is going to be a barn burner. There's no question. But the 4K is where you want to put your money. Look, this is what's interesting. I've been learning this recently as we're doing the short film. My wife educated me on all of this stuff. Most DCPs, that is a digital cinema package. That's how you deliver your movies to theaters these days. Not on reels anymore. It's on big old cans. It's on a little hard drive called a DCP, digital cinema package. Most DCPs are 2K. Did you know that?
I did know that. Which is why when I started making my movie and we were shooting on 4K, because 2K, this is the thing. 2K, after post-production, digital manipulation, all that stuff, it can reach the equivalent of 35 millimeter film.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day,
most theaters have not upgraded
to project 4K, certainly not 6K.
Yeah.
So when you're projecting a good clean 2K, you're projecting the same thing in terms of visual quality as 35 millimeter film. So in reality, you never really have to be anything more than 2K. As theaters upgrade to projectors, they start projecting in 4K in more places. For one thing, let me predict 2 things. Movies are going to get uglier.
Yeah.
Uglier and uglier. The more that numbers goes up, the uglier the movies are, and they're going to stop looking like movies. But yeah, I did in fact know that. 2K.
Yeah, it's amazing. So anyway, when you get your 4K Avengers Endgame, it may wind up looking better on your 4K TV than it looked in the theater, because you may have seen it in 2K.
Yeah.
So anyway, it does look spectacular. The CG work here, if you look at even the first Iron Man, it leaps and bounds. They just keep getting better and better. The software keeps getting better and better. And look, Endgame as a movie, I know it's 3 hours long. I know you think it's too long.
Yeah.
But I think what's interesting is that if you look at the last 2 Avengers films, they are diametric opposites of each other. Okay? The previous one begins with Thanos, killing Loki and beating up, attacking Thor's ship and all that. It's very action oriented. This begins with family. No CG. It begins with a really intimate moment. It's fascinating. And this goes to a really interesting place, too. This is not on... Yes, it's an action film. It's a superhero movie. But it's ultimately a movie. It's a drama about family. It's a really, really...
Every possible configuration of family.
Every configuration. We don't need to talk anymore. Everyone has seen this film. So the 4K is gorgeous. Make no mistake. It's got a thing called Ultra Play, which just lets you get right into the movie. And there are Blu-ray extras on here. One honors Stan Lee. I'm glad he was able to make it all the way through, at least the completion of this movie. There's a little thing on Robert Downey Jr., a thing on Black Widow, a thing on Captain America, deleted scenes, gags, and a whole lot of other stuff. But
the deleted scenes is what interests me the most.
They are always
figuring out what didn't make it into the 3-hour movie.
No kidding.
Somebody actually edited something out of the 3-hour plus movie.
But here's what is here's where I kind of come down on Avengers Endgame. This movie is going to... This is kind of a turning point for the Marvel Cinematic Universe now. The question is, where does it go from here? This really puts an exclamation point on everything. I mean, it is the end of a certain saga. It is the end of many characters, which if you haven't seen it, we won't tell you. But where does it go from here? Can it match this again?
Yeah, well, it depends on what new characters are brought into the fold.
Yeah.
I can see it intends to be. I mean, if you look at that Spider-Man movie, which is post Endgame,
Yeah,
it pointed
and terrible.
and yeah, it pointed itself at a Guardians of the Galaxy sort of mode.
Yep.
Let's be funnier. Let's be lighter. Let's not. And then now then they're going to go out into outer space and do whatever they do in outer space. I'm solid. I'm good with Endgame. With Endgame, I don't need another.
I don't either.
And then, I'm good.
I don't either. I don't need any more Thors. I don't need any more Doctor Stranges. It's very satisfying, and for that reason, I think it's going to get nominated for Best Picture.
Yeah,
I do.
Yeah.
I think it's going
well,
to be
the window has been opened now.
It has.
For a couple of movies now, actually, the window has.
Well, yeah,
but certainly Black Panther.
And the Wolverine Logan that got the screenplay nomination.
Yeah.
So, and even though that's a 20th Century Fox property, but that sort of earned a little bit of legitimacy. And really, it kind of goes to The Dark Knight.
Yeah.
The Dark Knight was the one that got them to go to 10 nominees because it didn't get nominated. So, and the Joker winning.
Yeah.
Heath Ledger's Oscar.
Yeah.
That too. So it's all kind of
that started to just click these things
Yeah.
down. To where, who knows? Maybe they'll nominate a comedy next.
So Avengers Endgame was number one at the box office for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks until it was dethroned by this godforsaken horrible thing.
Pikachu.
Detective Pikachu. The Pokemon Detective Pikachu live action CGI freaking Pikachu thing. I don't get it. Email us, gods@digigods.com or gods@cinegods.com. Explain to me why a live action CGI freaking Pikachu movie was even made and why anybody went to see this. I just don't understand this world. Look, I get it. Ryan Reynolds, I don't take anything away from you for voicing Pikachu. They wrote you a big old fat check, and you looked at them and you said, "You're going to pay me how much to do what?"
Yeah.
And he looked at his mortgage and he thought, I could buy all that boat payments.
Yeah.
I could buy a lot for that.
Yeah.
You're going to pay me how much to do what again?
Yeah, it's not like it's going to hurt him.
No.
It's all right.
So anyway. What a silly detective thing this is. But look, if you live in this world, that's fine. It's on 4K, and it also includes the Blu-ray version. This includes a thing called Detective Mode, which is like they try to make a game out of it. It's kind of silly and dumb, and it's also got featurettes. So 3 more 4K titles here. I'm going to save the best to last. We talked about Alita Battle Angel a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
We also got the 4K on that. It looks a lot better, actually. It's a better movie in 4K. I guess it's designed to be, mainly because of the audio, not so much because of the image. The audio is really, really just encapsulating. It's very, very impressive. It's a much better mix on 4K. Especially if you have like a 7.1 system. If you have a 7.1 or if you have like an Atmos system, which would be like a 5.1.2, really, really just wraps itself around you. Very, very impressive mix. Batman Hush is 4K animated DC original. They keep finding more impressive ways to tell Batman stories in animation than they do in live action.
Yeah.
I hope Matt's film really just kills it. A lot of great villains here: Poison Ivy and Catwoman and Joker and Nightwing. It's really Superman shows up here too. It's a real kind of gathering of figures. Nightwing, of course, is Robin after he has become something other than Robin.
Mm-hmm.
For those that don't know, but it's very, very well written, and it goes into the Hush is the name of well, I don't want to give anything away, but there's a graphic novel that tells this story originally, and it all kind of goes into Batman's psychotic issues with his own past, and it's very interesting. Really well written. So the graphic novel, great source material for this. It's Batman Hush on 4K, and it includes a little short called Sergeant Rock. If you know the DC world, you know who Sergeant Rock was, and that's worth paying attention to. Here's one I want to spend a little bit of time talking about as well, is the new Zhang Yimou film, which I am so glad they elected to release on 4K. It's called Shadow. Zhang Yimou for a while has been, I was right on board with his very earliest films, Red Sorghum and Judo and Raise the Red Lantern, which were straight up Chinese art films.
Yeah.
And then he got into his martial arts mode with Hero and House of Flying Daggers.
Jet Li.
And this splits the difference. This is like a martial arts film and a Shakespearean tragedy all wrapped into one.
Yeah.
And it is a supremely cool film. The effects are great. The action choreography by Master Didi.
Yeah, Master Didi.
Who did
friend of ours, Into the Badlands.
Sherm stuff for Into the Badlands. Is all really, really very impressive. It is just gorgeous to look at. But what's really interesting is the story. And it is palace intrigue. It is medieval Chinese palace intrigue, where there is where his main general has a secret in that he has a double, and that's what the Shadow is.
Yeah,
the Shadow is his double, and precisely how that pans out in this battle of warlords and who's going to win the battle of warlords is really, really interesting. And of course, the women in these stories always wind up being, in many respects, more interesting than the men, because the women are the ones that know the secrets and pull all the levers. It's a really good film. And I don't know if China's going to submit this for the Oscar, but I kind of hope they do. There is an English language version available as well. Don't bother with it. I don't know why anybody would want a dubbed version of this. The HDR is dazzling. The blacks and the shadows, in keeping with the title, all done, really given great artistic attention. It is just absolutely superb. So Zhang Yimou continues to knock it out of the park with one of the coolest looking 4Ks of the last 6 months. Certainly the best 4K this week. It'll really, really show off your set, because it's not really that CGI laden. So what you're seeing is, there's a little bit of CGI in there, but not enough to really make a difference. It's just a beautifully shot, wonderfully executed, fantastic drama. Shadow by Zhang Yimou.
Lovely.
So what else we got?
These are new too. Some of them are kind of interesting. Okay. Assassinat. This is a fun little movie, a youth-oriented movie about these 4 young astronauts who, after the invasion of Earth, by these intergalactic monsters, really, but evil aliens, the president has been kidnapped, and these kids have to go to the planet and save the president from assassination. That's my fun kind of film. It reminds me of sort of middle '80s, late '80s, middle '90s sort of kids and monster movie kind of thing. A lot of fun. Special features, audio commentary with the writer-director, and some deleted scenes and other things like that. And the special effects are not fantastic. The creature effects are kind of neat. These kids are all good actors. A fun movie is what I call this on Blu-ray. Domino, man, this movie was a mess.
Brian De Palma has lost his mind.
Just a flat-out mess.
I don't understand what happened
about a guy whose partner gets killed. He's going to go after the guy who killed his partner. Mysterious stranger has to do CIA, all this kind of stuff. You got Guy Pearce and the Nikolai Kostner-Wawal, the guy from Game of Thrones. All the guy who plays this detective. Look. This movie has one thing going for it. There are a number of these action sequences, basically chase sequences, including the one that it opens with. Those are put together beautifully. They're exciting, they're engaging, they're captivating. Then we slip into these narrative sequences where the story is sort of being explained. Now we're done. Because none of that makes any sense. And then another chase starts, and we're back in the movie.
I interviewed Brian De Palma some years ago. My interview was actually in a book on De Palma interviews, compilation book of interviews, and I made so much off of that interview being in that book that I am able now to own a yacht. I'm sorry. I take it back. I hoped for that. That actually never happened. Yeah. I take it back. Yeah. And I remember him telling me, because I asked him, I said, you used to make these movies, they're very Hitchcockian, but like with a twist, and now you're, and he said, at a certain point you get tired of your own obsessions.
Yeah.
And I think he's tired of his own obsessions, and I think he's tired of filmmaking. To
be
honest. It feels like he's just going through the motions, because what else is he going to do?
It definitely felt like he directed this one from the truck.
Oh yeah.
Brian's a big guy. Critters Attack, another in the series of what's got to be 15 Critters movies.
I know, and why resurrect this franchise? I guess so that D. Wallace Stone has a job again.
Yeah, D. Wallace.
She came back.
Yeah, whatever. And look, they got a little girl here who's interesting. She's the Critters Attack and the little monsters. And they do all the special effects.
Yeah.
And there it is. But there must simply be some strain of money that one can generate by reusing these titles. You
Yeah.
call it Critters something, and you automatically get a berth on the Sci-Fi Network.
Yeah.
Or Shutter, probably in Shutter, the places where you can go put the film and make a couple of bucks if you and not for nothing. Library exploitation. It seems that a lot of these companies, big and small, are in the business of exploiting their libraries. Not a lot of creativity coming from the ground up. They look at the shelf, they see what they got, they rename it, and next thing you know, you're watching Jumanji 5
Yeah.
or Critters Attack, which is what you got there. A violent separation. This is a fairly intense drama about a young man who's a young cop. His older brother kills somebody. And this young cop has to decide whether he's just going to flat out arrest his brother or help his brother hide the crime. He chooses badly. Let us say that. The young person who's killed has a sister, and that sister ain't going to let it go. And I like that. This is a concept for a movie that I like.
Yeah.
And with this guy, who wanted to be good but made that wrong choice, and now things have to be paid for. Anyway, bonus includes the making of A Violent Separation. It's what I thought was a fairly good little movie.
So I'm going to give you a name, and I want you to remember this name because this woman is going to become one of the great actresses of her generation. You're going to hear this name a lot. You're going to start to see this name show up in Academy Award nominated movies. You're going to start to see her name nominated, and you're eventually going to see her win an Academy Award and win some other big awards. The name is Honor Swinton Byrne. And she is Tilda Swinton's daughter.
Yeah.
And she is every bit as talented as her mom. And that apple fell really close to the tree. The film is The Souvenir. It's a little low-budget, gritty, British indie, directed by Joanna Hogg, who has a lot of TV credentials and has done some other fine films. But Joanna Hogg's filmmaking is very restrained. It's very artsy. It's very standoffish, very lugubrious, we might say. It's strictly art house fare, and the story, The Souvenir, is essentially a tragic love story, but done in a very, very stiff upper lip British way, very restrained way. Um, Honor Swinton Byrne plays a young woman who winds up having a relationship with a man who, she's a film student. She's she's trying to work her way through film school, and she winds up having a relationship with a guy who works for the British government. He works in the Foreign Affairs office, and he's something of a diplomat and travels. And he's very played by Tom Burke. He's very restrained and very, he's a little stiff, but he has secrets. And as those secrets emerge, their relationship deepens, but it also causes all kinds of tragic consequences in the relationship, and it goes in directions that you probably both will expect and not expect at the same time. But regardless, and the film is not for all tastes. However, what really makes this shine is Honor Swinton Byrne. She is a phenomenal actress. Her choices are always unusual and amazing, and this is the coming of age. And Tilda Swinton shows up here playing her mom.
Yeah.
She's doing her daughter a solid. She says, you know what? So my daughter has a chance to really show what she can do. Sure, I'll sign on to your little tiny movie and use my name.
Yeah.
Let my daughter get a shot. And boy, what a great thing! Good going, mom. Tilda nails it for the daughter. Honor Swinton Byrne is going to be one of the big stars of the future.
Yeah.
The next big UK actress.
Good stuff. You gonna do a stack over there?
Yeah, let me go through some of the music stuff here. We got some classical stuff from Naxos. People want to watch their opera and their concerts and everything else. Berlioz' Symphonie Fantastique with the Orchestre Révolutionnaire et Romantique under Sir John Eliot Gardiner. This is the performance at the Chateau de Versailles. And it is on Blu-ray with DVD as well, and it is just really, really wonderful. Any opportunity to hear Berlioz' Symphonie Fantastique performed is great. But the fact that this is, a Versailles performance, part of the Versailles Spectacles line, is wonderful. It's what makes it. It's why you want to watch it and not just listen to it. It's really, really a great staging. And Sir John Eliot Gardiner just nails this. It is absolutely delightful. Wonderful music, wonderful performance, wonderful location. Samuel Barber's opera Vanessa Gets a Blu-ray from Opus Arte. I love Barber. I don't necessarily love his operas per se, but the music is always great. This is with the Glyndebourne Chorus and the London Philharmonic Orchestra under the conduction of Jakub Hrusa and director Keith Warner. It's good. It's solid for people who like that kind of thing. Then we also have a Donizetti opera, Enrico di Borgogna. This is part of the from Dynamic. It is a world premiere, presumably, and this is with the Accademia Montis Regalis. And you know what? It's flamboyant. It's like Donizetti. It's a lot of. It's very classical. It's very classically staged. Lots of wigs and you know, the usual thing. This was recorded in December of last year. It is adequate. Not my cup of taste. Not my cup of tea. Then we have a couple of great discs, a couple of great Blu-rays, both of them based on ballets from the Norwegian National Ballet, based on Ibsen, the writings of Ibsen. One is Hedda Gabler, the other one is Ghosts. Both of these are from Bel Air Classique, and it's wonderful. I didn't even realize the Norwegian National Ballet was this prestigious, but they are. They're really good. And I'm not usually a huge ballet person, but boy, these are really, really well done. And my sister-in-law lives in Norway, and I'm going to scold her for not telling us about the Norwegian National Ballet, because it is really one of the it's really quite elite and beautiful staging, beautiful choreography. If you're a fan of ballet or even modern dance, you're really going to love this. The choreography in both cases is by Marit Moom Own is the one who directs Ghosts and does the choreography for Hedda Gabler, and then the choreography for Ghosts is also done by China Espedjord. I don't know how they necessarily divide those responsibilities internally, but look, it's great. It's terrific stuff. Then there is also, just from Naxos proper, from their proper line, we've got a couple of different operas here. One is Saverio Mercadante's Didone Abbandonata. Didn't watch much of this, not really my speed. If those names mean anything to you, knock yourself out. The other one is Wolfgang Erich Korngold's Das Wunder der Elian. This is beautiful. Korngold, of course, the legendary film composer, most famous for The Adventures of Robin Hood, the Errol Flynn movie. I had an instructor in school, Rudy Fair, famous editor who did Key Largo and Prizzi's Honor and a lot of things, who was once head of post-production at Warner Brothers. And Rudy used to tell us about how Korngold would actually compose, how he would put his scores together. And Korngold would walk in for a first screening of a film, the piano at the front of the screening room. He would kick everybody else out, and he would sit down, and he'd watch the movie the first time and just bang out on the piano whatever inspired him, whatever came into his head. One of the great composers of all time, certainly one of the great film composers of all time, a musical prodigy and a genius. And this is extraordinary music. The story is a mystery, believe it or not, and kind of Kafka-like in many respects. I'm not going to call it Kafka-esque because that doesn't seem to go necessarily with opera. But boy, this is really very, very intriguing. A really fascinating story done in a very modern style with his music, Das Wunder der Elian. Really, really cool. Then the last couple here, the World Orchestra for Peace, performing for the UNESCO-sponsored Beethoven's Symphony No. 9. These UNESCO concerts are always wonderful, conducted by Donald Runnicles. You can never go wrong with Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. And then Mozart's Die Zauberflöte, otherwise known as the Magic Flute. Nothing has quite compared with the Ingmar Bergman version of the Magic Flute, but this is quite lovely. This is a nice staging. And Klaus Maria Brandauer even shows up in this. Haven't seen him for a while. And this is, look, Magic Flute. You can't go wrong. That's from C major. All right, we got some docs left.
Yeah, a few of them over here. Yeah. Some of them rather interesting. Combat Obscura. By Miles Lugosi. This is a fairly.
This is that thing that's all edited together that the soldiers shot.
Soldiers shot using phone cameras and just all kinds of stuff. Marines mostly during the years 2011, 2012, in the heat of some of the conflicts, mostly the Afghanistan conflict. but also some stuff that was going on in Iraq at the time, and sort of put together this narrative, sort of strung together. It's just really an absolutely a captivating
Yeah.
film, but it's
Yeah.
also staggering.
Yeah.
In what it captures and what we see. It's very, very powerful. Special features include an interview with the director, Miles Lugosi. And, what can I say? He's been making these sort of fantastic films for quite a while now, and
Yeah.
this is just at the top of his game.
Fantastic. What We Left Behind, looking back at Star Trek Deep Space Nine. What a fun doc this is. And I was never a huge Deep Space Nine fan. You were. You were much
Yeah.
more into Deep Space Nine
Yeah.
than I was. I kind of like it when they go somewhere,
Well, they gave him the Defiant a little bit later. But,
Yeah, but it's like, oh, great, we're just going to stay here every week. And that didn't quite get. But you know what? It wound up being a really interesting show and a very, very clever show. They found a really interesting way of reinventing the world of Star Trek.
Well, what they did is they brought some characters in,
Yeah.
Worf and Miles and a few others, and it was sort of interesting. And then they got them off that station.
Yeah.
Actually, so it became an interesting sort of amalgamation of some of these things.
Well, this goes into how it was the so-called "quote unquote" black sheep of Star Trek shows, and how it was able to overcome the skepticism of fans initially, and really kind of help expand the world, the Gene Roddenberry universe of Star Trek. And this is a Blu-ray, and it is a really, really sharp documentary. It's really good. Has some deleted scenes and other stuff on it. Documentaries don't really need deleted scenes, but nonetheless, it's a good Blu-ray.
Interesting that in recent, during this presidential election cycle, there have been one or two people. I think Andrew Yang is the specific one who's talked about a minimum basic income.
Yes, he is.
So this doc is called Free Lunch Society, which explores this notion of creating a minimum basic income, which everyone over a certain age would get. And what that would mean to a society, what it would cost, but what it might cost. But then again, what problems it might specifically alleviate if everyone had a minimum basic income, which is an idea that goes back 65 years. It goes back much longer than that.
Friedrich Hayek, the famous Austrian economist and Nobel laureate, was the first one to propose this. Oddly enough, and
from that side of the
from the side where, but he proposed it as an alternative to the welfare
system. Yeah,
and his proposal, which was always very interesting, was that you do away with welfare, you do away with Social Security, you do away with medical systems, Medicare, and all that. You do away with all of those. And you just go with this, and you don't discriminate. If you're a millionaire, you get your
2,000, whatever it is.
2,000, whatever it is.
Yeah.
If you're dirt poor,
inflation,
you get your 2,000, whatever it is. Whatever it is. Yeah, everybody gets exactly the same. And if you want to forego it and send it back, that's fine. But everybody gets that check, and just across the board. And nobody's ever really tried that.
No.
I know that the Finns were trying a variation of it recently because they've just been having all kinds of massive public sector expenses, and they threw the towel in on it. It wasn't doing what they needed to do.
There are in Alaska, everyone used to get some sort of a annual stipend that came out of the oil money up there.
Yeah,
everybody got it. Now it wasn't an income. It's just that there was so much oil money, everyone was able to get a certain sort of return there, which is a different sort of thing. But nevertheless, everyone looked forward and understood that every year you were going to get a check, no matter who you were, that came out of the fact that leasing rights and everything was being drilled. And that went on for quite a while. I think Sarah Palin is the one that did away with that. So interesting stuff.
And then we've got Amazing Grace, Aretha Franklin, which is just so absolutely wonderful, and one of the great treasures of the American of world music. And this is a live recording. Just so you understand, this is not a documentary per se. This is more concert, but this is basically it's a documentary that is wrapped around the 1972 recording of Aretha Franklin performing her album Amazing Grace at the New Temple Missionary Baptist Church in Watts in 1972. And it's just a legendary, historic moment, and she is
lost to posterity for many years because the sound was a mess.
Yeah, had to be restored.
Had to be completely restored. Yeah.
But what an absolutely wonderful moment in time it was, and there's something special about a recording artist when they're not in a recording studio
Yeah.
and when they're in an environment that sort of taps into everything that makes them who they are. And Aretha comes from gospel.
Yeah, she comes
I
from
mean,
gospel music. Yeah,
that's her
yeah.
back. That was her.
That's that base background.
That's
Everything
it.
else comes out of that.
And this is not Aretha in front of the cameras in the Blues Brothers. This is not Aretha in a recording studio. This is not Aretha in concert. This is Aretha back to her roots.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing. It's
One of the things I love most about that movie, you get a lot of Aretha sitting at the piano. People forget that she was an accomplished pianist,
incredibly good.
Yeah. So one of those things, really beautiful. Narcissist Organ Grinders is provocative. I can't call it good.
Yeah.
But a provocative documentary. Narcissist is the name of this sort of unknown performance artist woman. The most that we know about her is that she's a woman of color, and she's always in these sort of disguises and these very complicated performance art things. And this particular film is about how she's dealing with the sort of life and illness and death of her mother. Her mother appears often in the film. We do not actually see her. She's always in some. Look, there's some really creepy and weird and bizarre stuff, particularly the stuff that she's doing in her live performances, her actual performance art. And then there's some really moving and touching and powerful instances where she's filming herself with her mother or filming her mother and speaking to, in a fairly poetic way, the impact of her mother in her life as she knows that her mother is ill and passing away. Not everybody's cup of tea, this Narcissist Organ Grinder, but if you can manage it, it's interesting in a certain sort of way.
Ring of Faith, Fight the Good Fight is a pretty interesting documentary. This is from Virgil Films. This is looking at the nexus of the world of boxing and religious faith, both in the lives of individual boxers, but also where communities are concerned. Communities where boxing is a way out for a lot of kids and people who are stuck in kind of a dead end lifestyle. But faith is also part of the fabric of the community. Kind of, I think it begs for a little more material, but certainly, it blows by. This is just barely over an hour long, but it's a really interesting topic I've never seen treated before, and we don't often sort of think of the worlds of sport and the worlds of religion and faith as coinciding, but where boxing is concerned, they significantly do, and so it is an interesting conversation.
All the way back to Muhammad Ali and everything that
translated
right. all of it.
Ring of Faith,
lies, manipulation, and extortion. $1 Billion Bully is a very, very interesting doc. It's posing the question as to whether or not Yelp, the thing that we all do now, we Yelp everything.
Yeah.
And we get back these answers, these hits of what's popular, what's correct, and small businesses are starting to beg the question. Whether Yelp is actually reporting algorithmically or however the hell they do it, the sort of reality of what people are choosing to purchase out there, or is Yelp being played? Has Yelp become a pay-to-play sort of dynamic?
Yeah.
So that, again, other companies, certain larger companies can manipulate and pay for, and suddenly that algorithm and the reality of what folks are actually engaging sort of falls by the wayside. I think it's a perfectly legitimate question. I don't know that they make the case in this film here, but it begs the question. I'm not the Yelper that I used to be. I put it like that.
Yeah. Great film documentary here. Margareta von Trotta, one of the great seminal filmmakers of the German new cinema, has made Searching for Ingmar Bergman, which is being released on Blu-ray from Oscilloscope. And this is coinciding with the 100th anniversary of Ingmar Bergman's birth. Obviously, that's been a thing. Criterion released their giant box set, which will be still a subject of a future show, and we're able to make suitable time for it. And this it's a standard examine the filmmaker by a filmmaker doc, which really goes just to the essence of what made Bergman such a significant and seminal figure when he was. She interviews other filmmakers as well, Olivier Assayas and Liv Ullmann, obviously, who worked with Bergman. And this is a great starting point. If you're not a Bergman fan, if you don't know much about Bergman, or even if you do, it's great. It really sums it up in a wonderful way. And there's never been another like him, and there'll never be another like him.
Yeah. Bergman-esque. They call it Bergman-esque for a reason. Hell Satan is this really sharp documentary about people who are not up to what it looks like they're up to. So, the Satanic Temple is this actual church that was organized by these people who have organized it so that they can challenge all sorts of public religious rights that are accrued to the members of the at least three major faiths, but if not others.
Yeah.
And this is what they're actually doing, and doing it through the prism of this religion. This little is about 6 years old now, quote unquote legitimate religion. And it begs the question of whether or not we mean what we say when we talk about religious freedom in this country, or whether or not we're just being flat out hypocrites by forcing
We're
us to
usually,
look.
we're usually hypocrites.
Almost always.
Yeah.
What's interesting about this is so funny. This is just the funniest documentary. The sort of little hypocrisy you point out. It's actually quite funny. Hail Satan. Penny Lane directing this. Penny Lane has made some really great docs, including one about abortion. I think it was called Abortion Diaries some 10 or 15 years ago.
As if there needs to be any more examination of the historical Jesus, History Channel gives us Jesus' Life. This is an 8-part, 8-chapter series, originally created for the UK television in the UK, and it basically tries to do an examination of Jesus' life through the eyes of 8 different people, 8 different individuals. And obviously going to scholars and historical sources and scriptural sources and dramatic recreation, and it's fine. It doesn't add anything. It's just sort of a novel approach to a lot of stuff that we've already seen done. But it's if you are really into religious history, it's not going to undermine anything. It's complimentary, and it's very well done. It's very nice and polished. So it could be good for educating the kids over the course of Easter or something like that.
Another film, Creating Woodstock, a documentary film about the creation of Woodstock. I may have confabulated some of the events in the Woodstock doc that we talked about earlier.
Yep.
With this one, either way, see them both. One of them features a sequence where Max Yatsker, the guy who owned that plot of land that famously would have that 3-day concert, actually takes to the stage. And I had never seen that before. I don't know whether it's this film or the one we talked about earlier. This one is Creating Woodstock, how it really happened. And a lot of this has a lot of performance stuff in it. So either this one or the other one has that moment where Max, a 60-some-odd-year-old man at the time, is given the microphone so that he can speak to the hordes, to the crowds there. And he is just the loveliest, most caring man, and he gives this wonderfully short but very moving speech about how he was so happy to have all of those young people there on his farm, how people warned him against it. But he said, no, these kids are good. I know they're good. And it was just a lovely, lovely speech, and Max gave it. If it's not in this film, it's in the other one. Find that if you don't do anything else with these two films, and see how that generational divide we thought separated young people and older people, the older generation in the 60s, that was a myth.
Yep.
That was a myth, and Max proved it on that day.
Fantastic. And we go out with the documentary Screwball, which is a bit of a wacky doc, but also an important doc. And this deals specifically with the role of steroids in sports, and more specifically in baseball. But it's the director of this is Billy Corben, who did Cocaine Cowboys, so he knows the territory a little bit already. And this goes into this incredibly bizarre Miami subculture of steroids and drugs, and that has found its way into Major League Baseball. And we all read about this and saw it on the news at the time, but I don't think we realized how incredibly what a web of intrigue it was. You just thought it's a bunch of corrupt doctors and people. No, it is so much more like it's like some kind of a weird crime novel. It really gets into it. It just the moving pieces of this are so weird, and to his credit, he's able to uncover them and all the bizarre figures who are central to this. So the documentary is called Screwball, which I can't tell you anything else about it. It'll give too much away, but it's really good. It's really good. All right, with that, we'll be back next week, and we'll see you then.